Hello and welcome to Honest Car Reviews. My name is Eric and this week I have a very special car or truck for you. It is the new Ford Ranger Raptor. And this is in essence a racing truck or off-road truck for the street. The same way that a hot hatch is a racing car for the streets. But what makes the Raptor so special? We'll start from the beginning. Ranger is the smallest pickup from Ford. It is smaller than the very famous F-150. And it is also one of the few pickups that you can buy in Europe. So, the Ranger, it is a smaller pickup by American means, but for European means it is quite big. And the Raptor, what's a Raptor? If you want an off-road Ford, you buy a Raptor. And what do you get when you buy a Ford Ranger Raptor? We'll start with the most obvious, the exterior. You get the special paint which you can buy, and you also get a more blacked out look. Especially the fender wideners, because this car comes with really fat off-road tires. It is winter in Sweden right now, which means that the car has winter tires. So these are not the regular off-road tires, and it's not the regular off-road rims as well. These are for the winter. But anyway, you have tow hooks on the right hand side and on the left hand side, and you have this skid plate underneath to protect the steering assembly, the chassis and the springs and dampers. Also, speaking of springs and dampers, they're upgraded. You now have racing Fox suspension. I don't know if you can see it, but they are blue. They're pretty dirty right now. And also the whole chassis has been reinforced, which means that this car is really capable when going off-road. It is in essence a monster truck, and you have the really cool Raptor logo at the sides here as well, and in the front, and also at the rear. I really like the font that they have, and on the left side they have the Ranger. But I mean, this gray paint, it's not as shouty as some other paints. There is a special blue paint as well. But I really like this gray look. It looks like the same gray as the Ford Fiesta ST. But you also have some extra side steps with the Raptor logo here. And we also need to speak about the engine. The engine is a 2-liter diesel engine. 500 Newton meters, 213 horsepower. And that is plenty for what this car is supposed to do. To fly over some really rough terrain, or here some off-road or some countryside roads, which are really common in Sweden. However, a lot of people complain that this is not a V8 or a V6. The V6 is available in the F-150 Raptor. It's a V6 twin turbo, and before that the F-150 Raptor had a V8. And I have to admit, it would be really cool to have some V8 sound from this engine. The diesel, it is hugely capable, and I understand why Ford chose this engine, because it is capable. It is okay regarding fuel consumption. You can't expect this car to get good fuel consumption because it's such a massive car. It weighs 2.5 tons. But I have to agree, the engine sound could be better. Maybe you could have a V6 engine or a bigger, more cylinder diesel engine, which is existent in different Ford pickups in the US. But I mean, The exterior, of course, if you put this next to a standard Ford Ranger or even a Ford Ranger Wildtrak, which is just a step below this one, you'll clearly see differences. You also have the big, if you need to load stuff, this is the car for you, because you have a huge bed which you can lock here. So you can open up this part and you can flip it down. You also have a really big key, which is the same as the Mustang. You have the Raptor logo, and then you have two buttons, unlock and lock. And you also have an optional diesel warmer, which costs 1,500 euros here in Sweden, and it can be needed because it gets cold here. You have the keys for the rear bed, but we'll get in. You have four doors, which means that you have plenty of space for people. I can sit comfortably in the rear as well. And if you're a bit smaller than me, you have the grab handle here to just take your foot and just swing yourself inside. And when you're inside, you're greeted with this pretty cool steering wheel. You have up and down shift pedals, which feels to be actual metal, and they are the same color as the exterior as well as here. And all in all, the interior is very, very pleasant to sit in. It is big, it is American, but it isn't as bad as I would expect in some ways from a pickup truck. And the heightened car, the pickup truck, really helps give you an overview of what happened around you. What I do not like about this interior is this part here. It's a bit outdated, and also the sync system. I don't know if it's the latest, but it is pretty slow compared to other Ford sync systems. But here are some of the more important things for the Raptor, the Ranger Raptor. You have 2H, 4H and 4L. These are for the differentials throughout the car. So this is 2H, so rear wheel drive, 4H, four wheel drive, and 4L is low range. So 4H high range, 4L low range. So 4L is when you're going over rocks and you need to drive slowly. And you also have, you can disable the anti-spin, and also you can disable the rear differential, so just power the front wheels, and some incline monitoring here. But I'll start the car now from the engine start and stop. I really like the steering wheel. It's thick, it's the Raptor logo here, it's perforated leather and a red stripe in the front, and you have the Raptor Ford Performance. So Ford Performance have worked the magic on this car as well. And also when you start it, you have different modes. So you have 6 modes. So you have normal, sport, grass, gravel and snow, mud and sand, Baja, which is a special mode, the Baja 1000, which is in America when they drive off-road with really cool trucks, and you have rocks, and that's special for the 4 low range. So I also have the manual setting, so I can shift this car manually. But the gearbox is a 10-speed from the Mustang, and it actually works quite well with this engine. So we'll drive now and see how it is. Sunset here in Sweden. It's a beautiful, beautiful day, a bit windy though. And this road is no match for the Ford Ranger. The car actually likes to drive a bit faster over some uneven terrain, because it starts to float and the suspension really comes in its element, so to speak. But the car is pretty thirsty. I've driven some off-road and I've driven on some highway, and it's average around 10 liters per 100 kilometers. And because it's a diesel, it takes some time to warm up. So the diesel warmer is pretty preferable when you buy this car. But speaking of extra options, there are not that many extra options apart from just the Ranger package, which is very, very big in itself. So the car with extra options costs around 50,000 euros or 500,000 Swedish kroner. And many people may say that that's a lot of money, but when you consider that you can buy a really fast and hunker down hot hatch for that amount of money, and you look at the completely opposite spectrum, you have off-road trucks. Why can't you buy an off-road truck for the same amount of money? So you have to take that into consideration. And actually, driving this car on the regular road, it works as a standard car. It doesn't feel like a pickup, because I've driven pickups before, and you get confidence from the rear, which can sometimes be a problem for pickups with stiff rear axles. But the suspension and the increased chassis really gives confidence, especially going off-road, but also when you drive regularly. However, being a truck with big tires and a high ride height, it is difficult to keep it within the lines when you're driving on the highway, especially because it's widened. When you consider the... Okay, so here's a car here. When you consider the side rear view mirrors, it is over 2 meters wide, and getting into parking garages can be very difficult. But we'll go in reverse here now. And I had some obstacle behind me, but the car comes standard with parking sensors, which is very helpful, because as I said, it is a very boxy car, and sometimes it can be very difficult to get an overview of how big the car actually is. But we'll go on a bit now to see how the car feels. This is in normal mode, and you don't need mud and sand for this road. Actually, maybe sport to get some better feedback from the engine. But here you can see the brakes take good, and the anti-spin really helps to keep you within the limits of the car's the car's limits, so to speak, without being too intrusive, so you can still have a bit of fun. Nice sunset. But I tested the car yesterday on some more rugged terrain with a lot of water, with a lot of mud, and it was hell. But the Ford Ranger Raptor handled it without any difficulties, especially in four-wheel drive. It just drives itself out, and I think that it would be even better with the summer off-road tires. As you can hear, the diesel engine sounds a bit bad, I have to say, but it is a very capable engine, and I see why they choose this engine. As I said before, you have the sync system. It is well developed, even though it's a bit slow here. It is simple. You have the audio, you have the climate controls, which you can also control down here, which with these small buttons it can be a bit difficult to see them when it's dark. But you also have the navigation, as usual with sync system. One thing that I wasn't so pleasant about was the sound system, which could be a bit better. Maybe a Bang & Olufsen system for the European market would be preferable, or something like that. The Ford Ranger Raptor, it is usable because it's a big truck. It has a lot of space in the bed. You can fit 5 people comfortably. You have a lot of head space. I really like the interior, and especially the the very readable gauges, which are cool and very big. So if you have a bit of bad eyesight or it's very dark, you will be able to read them very easily. The fuel consumption, as expected, not the best. I have to fuel this up quite often. So driving this from and to work, not the cheapest option. But then again, it is not specifically made for driving to and from work. 50,000 euros is expensive, but for the package it is. I have difficulties because I haven't driven anything comparable with this truck, so I have to go with just the price and what I get. And for that price, I think it's a good deal, especially when you think that this truck is suited towards a fanatic or someone that wants something unique. But if you want something unique, I would say that you would get the blue color instead, because that pops even more. This color is good for when you're driving off-road and it gets dirty. It doesn't, the blue paint really shows if it's dirty. So the Ford Ranger Raptor, a good car, a good truck, and a really fun toy. This car is a good deal and a very enjoyable and fun little toy. My name is Eric from Honest Car Reviews. See you next time.